Welcome to Season 2, Episode 19 of the Me and ADHD podcast. The podcast where anybody on their ADHD journey, no matter how far along you are, can come along and have a voice and have a safe place to tell their story. So today I'm having a conversation with fellow NDer Gemma, who is late diagnosed autistic and OCD, but is on the waiting list even for an ADHD assessment as well. So, hello, Gemma. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I am all right today. It's been a bit of a hectic day today, but calming down now. It's all been good, so I'm calming down. Right
Yeah.
now, Gemma has a great social media presence, advocating for mental health, and runs her own podcast in Wales called Rania Baich.
It was good. It was a good attempt.
Okay. That's good. I kind of find out that it was good. It was a good attempt.
It's a good
Okay.
attempt.
Okay. Go on. Say it for me, please.
Rani'r baich.
Rania Baich. Okay.
Rani'r baich. You were so close.
I was so close. And am I right in thinking that's share the burden?
It is sharing the burden. Yeah,
Okay, I got something right. Excellent.
you did smash that.
So yeah, runs her own podcast in Wales. But she's here today with me to talk about reasons why she's looking at ADHD assessment and diagnosis. So, Gemma, tell you what, let's go back. And what's life like before your ASD diagnosis?
Life was, I really struggled with my mental health. So it was really up and down. I think I started suffering with mental health when I was about 10. That's when it really hit a peak
Okay.
where I couldn't go to school. I struggled socially, crowds and things like that. So that's when I started having help. So yeah, life before the actual diagnosis was really hectic. Lots of depressive episodes, lots of anxiety, um, and really not fitting into the world, not having a clue where my place was. Really good, like a really high achiever in school, and yet then couldn't carry on anything because I would get so overwhelmed when I had to be in crowds or I had to speak in front of people. And yet now I'm podcasting, but just really, really struggled socially.
So did you have as a child then? Did you have lots of friends, or a few good friends, or nothing at all? Or
No, well, as a young child, I think there was a big group of us. We were quite lucky in our school that we all seemed to stick together, when you're walking around the village and stuff. But no one really understood me, so I couldn't keep friends. I could make friends, but then as soon as I'd have to cancel because I couldn't do certain things, I'd sort of find out they were planning things behind my back because they wouldn't bother asking me, knowing, oh, Gemma wouldn't be able to do that anyway. Lots of those. I think a lot of us have those shared experiences where we found out we were just the one left outside the circle quite a lot. And that seemed to be what continued through my life then until I learned that I can't function in large groups of friends. I have to have just one on one or a couple of friends.
yeah, I get that. It's quite hard. Like I say, going through school, even just after school, the whole friendship thing is it's a minefield because
Yeah.
I mean, if you get diagnosed later on, or you don't have the information until later on, you don't know what's going on. You don't know why.
No.
You can't deal with loud noises, or you can't deal with lots of people, but there's not that understanding of why. So it's hard to explain to anybody.
Yeah, and that's where the sort of mental health element can come in because you then assume that you're the problem. You're watching other people socializing, going, oh, well, they can fit in, and they're not having panic attacks when they go into a shop or when they go into a crowd or when and obviously at that time, I wasn't really aware that it was a sensory related thing. So I just thought I was a complete misfit and something was happening to me every time I went into these places, but I didn't understand it. Um, so yeah, it was really, really difficult to navigate friendships. I still, not that I don't understand friendship, I understand the concept of it, obviously, but I still do struggle with friendships because I struggle to know whether someone's being genuine. I remember seeing something and it was saying you've got two choices as an autistic because you can't read the social cues. You've got two choices to trust everybody or to trust nobody. And one of them could put you in a vulnerable situation where people take advantage or whatever. And then the other one is a really lonely existence. So you've kind of got to make a choice because
Mm.
I've got no idea what people's social cues or intentions are. And it can be really difficult.
It is. It's one. I find. I mean, I laugh sometimes at myself because there are certain things that seem for everybody else seem so easy, so trivial,
Yeah.
but seems just so hard for us to master, to grasp, to even explain. Why
Yeah.
you struggle with it. And
Mm.
it's because it sounds like you're making a big deal of something. Well, because it is a big deal, but it's
Yeah.
over what they would, presume is something really kind of trivial and
Yeah.
small. But yeah,
Yeah.
these things matter. These things
They're
really
doing.
do.
It's understanding that we don't have that same, I used to teach child development. That was my job. And, you go through these processes of development, you know, progressions in a child. And those are things that they would pick up. They don't really need to learn how to be friends with people, how to interact with people. And when they don't learn it, that's when there could be a problem, obviously. But then to someone who that came naturally, like, I don't know, whatever else, it's hard to explain then that you genuinely don't understand when people are taking you for advantage, taking advantage of you, or um, if people are being kind or mean, or you just don't understand those things.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to learn, a lot to get your head around, and it takes. I mean, I don't know about for yourself, but I mean, I'm not as far gone. That's kind of probably the wrong saying. I'm not. I was diagnosed like a year and a half ago. So my kind of like journey is still kind of like beginning, but even a year and a half down the line of constant just trying to learn and learn and learn all about myself. It just feels like I'm only sort of not even a quarter of the way yet with the information. So much to learn, to understand.
You've got to unpack your whole you've got to sort of unpack backwards and then start going forwards really of new. You've got to unpack all those things that you've learned incorrectly over the years, that
Yeah,
you've learned in order to accommodate other people rather than meeting your own needs. And you've got to go back and unpack all of that and then start going again. It's a journey.
it certainly is. So what sort of prompted you then to get the assessment? And also you struggled, um, through school and everything. But was there anything in particular, be it a family member say something or you seen something that's triggered? I think I need to get an assessment.
Um, no, as I said, I would never have said autism or ADHD. Never, probably. I probably wouldn't have come to that conclusion for myself. I'd I was under the mental health team, and originally I thought, which a lot of people get misdiagnosed with, thought I had borderline personality, and I was having lots of friends sending me things about borderline personality, going, "This is you. This is exactly what you do." The traits are they can be overlapping.
Yeah,
So we'd spoken to that about that with the doctors, and they were trying to help me, and they just couldn't. They didn't know why everything wasn't working. I'd been like 20 years under the mental health teams, had loads of therapies, and they were just a bit baffled as to why things weren't working for me. And they took my case to a psychiatrist or someone higher. And the first thing she said, just looking at my notes, was like, "Has she been checked for being neurodivergent?" So they obviously brought it back to me, and I was like, I suppose, like, I'll have a look. And then me and my husband sat and looked through the like traits, then the symptoms, traits, whatever you want to say, of ADHD and autism. And my husband just went, "That's you. That is you to a T. That is everything. You can just tick all the boxes." So they rushed through my autism assessment because I was under the mental health team and I wasn't doing very good at the time. So they rushed it through, and I think I was assessed within about 2 3 months. And she told me straight away. I think it was like a 4 hour assessment, and yeah, she told me straight away that I was autistic. And then obviously the proper report came through, but she said that I'm autistic and they suspect ADHD. So they want me to then have the ADHD because a lot of things were flagging up as ADHD as well.
Okay. So with the ADHD, then, I mean, what do you think is the key areas that kind of are flagged as ADHD? Which do you think? What traits do you think you have? Which are
It's really hard. Like when they're explaining the overlap, I'm not even under sure. I'm not 100% sure where the crossover is, but I know the definite ADHD traits I have are um, executive dysfunction, I think it's called,
yeah.
where I just cannot prioritize a task. I work better under pressure. So if I get 5 hours to do a task, I will do nothing for about 4.5 of those hours, if not leave it to the last 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden I'm smashing out like, I don't know, 300-word essay or, I can't plan or organize certain tasks, but I get really, really overwhelmed. Just by little things that other people, as you say, can do normally, folding clothes. I get bored easily, really impulsive, massively impulsive, which does cross over with the autism quite a bit and does cause a bit of conflict in my brain. Um, what else? I don't know. I can't think, but the overlap is hard to sort of determine, isn't it?
It is. I think ADHDers will listen to this and go, "Yep, tick tick. Yeah, she is. Yeah, she's a member of
Yeah,
the tribe. Yeah."
isn't it? It's,
But
it's, it's definitely there, and it's that can't sit still, don't know what to do with myself. Um, and I don't know if this is an ADHD because this is a bit of a random one, but I've always got this feeling. I've said it so many times, even before thinking of being autistic. I get this feeling like I want to rip my skin off because my insides just feel like they're jiggling. Like I need to get out of my skin. And I don't know how many times I used to tell people years and years and years ago, thinking it was like an anxiety thing. I was like, I feel like I need to unzip my skin. And it happened last night. I couldn't sleep at all because I felt like my bones were rattling, like I needed to move, I needed to jiggle. Um, and that's what I've learned to do now. I've learned, I
okay,
use an acupressure mat, I move around, I fidget. Um, Whereas before I used to try and just sit with it and try and comply. And people would be like, "Oh, you're such a fidgety person." But I never understood it before. I was like, no, my insides are rattling is the only way I can explain it.
okay. That's. I don't know if that's a hyperactivity thing. I'm predominantly inattentive, so I'm not
Mm.
bouncing off the walls. I'm not physically hyperactive, so I couldn't really have any. I couldn't give you any insight about that at all. Um,
Yeah. No, it
but
doesn't come
it's,
out with me. I think it's internal with me. It's that it's in there, but then I don't actually do it, if that makes sense. But
yeah.
that's why I use like the fidgets and more subtle movements to try and get that zoom. I call them the zoomies. I don't know what they're actually called.
That'll do. That's fine.
The zoomies.
No, it's yeah. As you say, there's a lot of crossover. A lot of crossover. Um, but I mean, this when it comes to the ADHD thing, have you got a date coming through yet at all, or no?
Then I think at the moment in Wales we're looking about 4 years, and obviously that one
Okay.
isn't being fast tracked. My autism one got fast tracked because they felt that it was a priority to get that one done. I'd say I'm more. I don't know. I haven't had the ADHD side, but I'd say the traits of autism are maybe stronger. Um, but again, I don't know because the crossover's wild.
Yeah, it's one of the things you need to work out, really. To be fair, so when you
Yeah.
so with the symptoms that you've got from the ADHD aspect, I guess, have you put any sort of strategies in place? Anything to help to support yourself? Anything you
Um,
well you did say about possibly, it might not be the ADHD, but you're jiggling, you're fidgeting and things like that. But anything else at all?
that's been the biggest one is
Yeah.
learning how to handle that skin crawling feeling. And the acupuncture mat, as acupressure mat, whichever it's
Okay.
called. That's been the best thing I think I've ever bought. Um, Another thing that they taught me to do in the assessment was go for massages. Um, because I get this thing, I want to be compressed. Like
Yeah.
I want to have pressure in my feet in particular and my legs. I always used to like try and stick them behind the sofa so like something would press on my legs. And it used to get so bad even as a child. I remember I used to want a car to drive over my foot, and I used to put and I'd be like, I really want the car, thinking it wouldn't hurt because it would just relieve that pressure. So they taught me to like do little things regularly to stop it getting to that stage where I just need to be like ziplocked into something. Um, so that's been going for regular massages has been a big one, timing things, understanding how my brain works, that I need that sort of pressured activity. So then making my own little targets kind of helps a little bit. I see some people, they put a timer on the telly and they go, right, how much can I pick up in 30 minutes? Or how much can that kind of thing. I tend to do it more subtly. I'll boil the kettle and I'll be like, how much can I do while I wait for the kettle to boil? And I can do so much just because I'm like impulsively doing it rather than procrastinating and just putting it off. So yeah, timers has definitely been one. And being honest has been my biggest one because again, going back to the friendships, I used to just suffer in silence. I used to think like, oh, I don't think people like me. And then I just like distance myself and I'd slowly stop speaking to people and slowly fall away. And they would usually let me. And then I'd be like, oh, see, they didn't like me. But now I've slowly learning to broach conversations a little bit better and just go in like, have I upset you here? Um, and just having that open communication because I feel like it's healthier for everybody instead of me losing loads of friends that they probably think they've upset me when really I think I've upset them and I've just gone.
Do you get, I know, RSD, I don't know if, have you heard of RSD?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it is rife with the ADHD sort of community, but it's not,
Yeah.
anyone can have it.
Yeah.
Is that something that you get as well? Is that something that affects?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big problem with friendships. That and can't remember what it's called. Justice sensitivity.
Yeah.
This is between the two of them, they make friendships impossible because I don't know when people are joking. So that I don't know if that's probably a crossover somewhere. I don't know when people are joking, so I get offended rather than just I can't do banter. I can't do the like, ripping into each other. But then I get really defensive over other people. So I won't stand up for myself, but if I see someone else being wronged, I'm just there like bull at the gate. Um, and I just find that can be really difficult to navigate in friendships and just in life when you're that type of person. I think it's a positive thing. I would rather be the person who stands up for the person that's been wronged, personally. Um, but it does make it very awkward. People don't tend to like you when you're that person.
Yeah, true. Yeah, no, RSD is horrible. And it's
Yeah.
it's probably, I would say, the second worst thing about my ADHD. It's it's
Mm.
it's ruled my life. Pretty much everything is all about the RSD or because of the RSD. I'm
Yeah.
organized. I'm a very organized person now because of the
Mm.
RSD. Um,
Yeah.
but it's, yeah, everything. Yeah, I hate it. It's awful. Um,
It is. It's hard to navigate, and it comes into every area. Like it's not just friendships. Work is another one. You know, that's probably a big one, really. When you understand in work, you're going to mess up. You're going to do something wrong, and you're probably going to get picked up on it. But I will just obsess over it for months then, thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done that. They hate me now. Everything's going to implode. When the reality is, someone has picked you up on that. They've gone, oh, you made this mistake today. Can you correct it? And they've forgotten about it 10 minutes later.
yeah,
Whereas I'm there 3 months down the line going, oh, do you remember when I made this mistake? And they're like, no, not a clue. What do you
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. You just think about it and just you go over and over and over and just overthink
Yeah.
every single little bit of that scenario, and it just drives you insane. My wife's the same. She'll just, she'll get over it within minutes, and
Yeah.
I'm just I
You
can't.
just can't forget it. And that's, and then when you've got people going, oh, just forget it, like that happens in life. No, I can't forget it. They're like, people make mistakes. Yeah, I know. And I would give that advice to anybody else. And that's what annoys me more than anything. If someone came to me, it's as if you've got two different brains sometimes. Someone comes to you and they say something, and you go, oh, they probably didn't mean it like that. Like they've probably forgotten about it. And you will reassure them, but you cannot take that advice for love nor money. You couldn't pay me to make me think like that.
Oh, I wish it was that easy.
I
But
know, be brilliant.
so you got systems in place, you got things in place to help out.
Yeah.
With the ADHD assessment, then, what difference do you think it's going to make? Is it going to bring anything
Um,
to the table?
I think it'll bring that extra clarity. Um, I don't think, for me personally, because I've had one assessment, the reason I haven't pushed for the ADHD assessment, like not that I haven't pushed for it, but I'm happy to wait,
Yeah,
um, is because I don't know what it would bring. Because the only difference would be if I decided to go on medication. Um, but for me personally, I like knowledge. I believe knowledge is power. So knowing what's going on in my head would be nice to see it down on paper. Um, but I firmly believe, like, obviously, they flagged it up. Everything I'm looking at, I'm fairly confident that I have ADHD traits. So I'm already putting things in place. So I don't think it would change anything practically, other than the medication. But again, when you've got both ADHD and autism, there is the risk of medicating the ADHD and making the autism worse. So I it's not something I don't know if it's something I would be doing. So I don't know how much of a change it would be, other than, as I say, knowledge. For me, I like to know what goes on in my head. I like to have confirmation of, right, this is me, this is what's going on, and this is how I can work with it. So it
yeah.
would just be like a, I don't know, justification kind of thing rather than anything else.
No, no, that's fair enough. I mean, we've spoken before, but for anyone else listening, is the reason why we're having this conversation is that I went for my assessment first,
Yeah.
and they said no to that, but they saw ADHD. I'm like, okay. Um, and I was thinking to myself, if I'm not, I was struggling so much, and it was like, okay, and with my knowledge at the time, the only thing I could think of is autism or ADHD. I couldn't think of all the other things it could have been, but those are the two things.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then I think about it 6 months later, a year later, I can't remember. I had the ADHD assessment with a different company because I thought, well, if I am going to go on medication, and the other guys didn't do that. So, and
Mm.
and they said, yeah, okay, yes, it's there. I was like, okay, so, and everything, and I'm on medication, and everything's been put in place, and it's all good. But I still think there's some autistic traits there as well.
Mm.
And in my head, I was thinking, well, I'm still thinking, do I need to go back and get a second opinion? Do I need to take it any further? I don't think I do. I think I'm okay where I
Mm.
am. I don't think I need to get a diagnosis of anything else purely because of my journey and the research I'm doing. And I'm just happy just knowing I'm ADHD, I'm on medication, and all this I struggle with. And this is what I do for this, and this, and this. Now, whether that's all
Yeah.
ADHD, whether that's, but at the same
Mm.
time, if I if I was diagnosed with autism first and I hadn't
Yeah.
been assessed for ADHD, I don't know if I would have that same mindset. I think I would go
Yeah.
for, oh, I think I would go for the assessment, but I wouldn't do it the other way around. So I thought, okay, that's an interesting
Mm.
topic, and see what other people think. So that's what I'm talking to
I
you.
think it I think it does depend on the medication. I would say that is, like, ADHD is important to medicate if it is completely taking over your life. In my particular situation, I would say the autistic traits are what really hold me back. Like, um, in my life. They're probably the ones that have stepped in where I've had the feeling of feeling broken, feeling out of place in the world. Whereas the ADHD symptoms have caused a lot of anxiety and things like that, which I am now learning to manage. Um, and it's just amazing for my brain. And again, everybody's different. How just learning, I love to learn and I love to find out facts. So the more I speak to people, like doing my own podcast, the more I'm able to find out how other people work and how what helps them, the more I'm able to piece things together in my own head. Um, and I'm very much I'm content in that at the minute. So I
Yeah,
wouldn't say, like, obviously if my ADHD assessment came up tomorrow, I'd be going for it. I want the assessment, but I don't know how much of a game changer it's going to be because I'm not 100% sure whether I'd take medication purely because of the risk of whether the autistic traits would go higher, which would then cause more of a disruption in my life, if that makes sense.
yeah. No, it does. It does. Do you know much about the medication?
Yeah, like I've looked at it, but the more I look at it, the more it seems that, it can bring out the autistic tendencies. And I look at it a lot from my child's perspective. So that's how I've looked at it. And you're saying about an ADHD assessment. I don't know whether I just think differently, but I've got one daughter who's awaiting an autism assessment. She's been waiting 4 years and it's now finally coming up now. And she really, really struggles. She's a mini me, absolutely struggles completely. And I would say that she's strongly autistic tendencies. My second child does show ADHD symptoms. She always has, okay? But me and my husband have never pushed for a diagnosis. I think it was mentioned to us in school not that long ago, and we were like, no, like she's fine, she's absolutely okay, because it's not affecting the emotional regulation. We're like, she's okay at the moment. And then we were told last week by a dietitian that they want us to push for an ADHD diagnosis for her. Because obviously it was affecting the eating, it does affect the sleeping. So now that I'm seeing, okay, it is impacting her life, um, we are willing to go for the ADHD assessment. We're gonna put her through it just to see so she can get answers. But for some reason, the diagnosis of ADHD isn't registering in my brain the same as the autism, if that makes sense, with my kids as well as for
Yeah.
myself.
And I think you said quite some poignant things there, where it's about the education, it's about the knowledge. The knowledge is key. Okay,
Yeah.
you can't just get a diagnosis and just have medication and go, there you go, crack on with your life.
Yeah.
It is unfortunately, it is all about doing the research and finding the strategies that work for you, put them in place, and those are the things that are really going to make a massive difference. Medication is great, doesn't work for everybody. Not everyone gets on with it. I get on with it and it's worked really well for me, but it only works to a certain degree, it only works in certain areas, and I still have
Mhm.
to put strategies in place, otherwise I'll be absolutely lost.
Yeah.
So it's like I would say
And
my
I
go on.
Oh, sorry. I think as well that would be the risk. I wouldn't want ever to advise somebody, oh yeah, go for your ADHD assessment. It's important in order to get medication. Because as much as yes, there is medication available, I wouldn't want anyone to see it as a quick fix and are just instantly over. And I think that's where having the autism diagnosis first, I got really upset when I got diagnosed with autism because they were like, there isn't a fix. And I remember for ages I was like, oh, well, I'm just broken. And then I learned to live with it. I was like, no, I'm not broken. I can find ways. There's no fix, but there are ways, things you can put in place. Whereas if I was going for the ADHD assessment with only medication in mind, I think I'd be bitterly disappointed at the end when I take that pill. And yes, okay, I might be able to function a little bit better, but the other problems are still going to be underlying, and I'm still going to have to accommodate my brain into my life. I can't fix my brain. And that's what I would advise anyone to look at. There is medication to support it, but there is no fix. You are who you are. Your brain is going to be how your brain is, and you need to accommodate your brain, work with it instead of working against it. And the ultimate goal in any assessment is the knowledge. So try to ignore the medication as much as obviously it's there, but don't make it your main focus.
Absolutely. Um, with my knowledge beforehand, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do medication. I'm going to do medication. But it's not until I started taking it and doing the research and everything like that I realized, actually, as you say, it's no quick fix. No, it does some things, and it's, as well as it's working for me, I still need a lot of things in place to help. And it's
Yeah,
the one thing. Social media is horrible and great at the same time.
yeah,
Um, I don't think anyone should be searching for information on neurodiversity on social media. However, where else are we going to get it? Because we're not going to get it from the people who should be giving it to us. So
yeah.
fine, great. That's how life is at the moment. But the one thing I would say to people is, when it comes to information about medication for ADHD and whether you should take it or not, do not go on social media, because you're going to get
No,
either the I've taken a pill and half an hour later, everything is clear, it's all wonderful and life is great.
yeah,
No, that's not managing your expectations at
no,
all. Or you get the other side, don't take medication because it's this bad, you've got all these things will happen to you, and da, da, da. And you don't really get the real life situations and what you need to know. So talk to the clinicians that are doing your assessments. That's
yeah,
where you need to get your knowledge from.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. It's the same with any health thing. And I think, if you are researching online, make sure you go into accredited places, same as when you're studying in school. And if you're writing something, sorry, my daughter's just trying to call me through the door.
it's all right. It's okay.
And I've lost my train of thought now.
It's all right.
What was I saying?
I don't know. I'm ADHD. I have no idea who you are.
Um, I completely lost my train of thought.
About doing research and going to the right
Doing this.
places.
Oh yeah. So when you're online doing things, you have to pick accredited, sites, going to the NHS, going and getting varied information as well.
Yeah.
So going, if you are looking at accounts like ours, where we're talking about our own experiences, make sure you're not just picking out one person. Go and look at a variety of people, get a variety, because everyone's experience is different. Um, You were a pain in the bum. She's just come in. I'm very sorry.
It's all right. Hello.
You saying hello? No, shy now. So yeah, I think I rambled there because I got distracted. Which is standard ADHD.
You'll say, yes. Yes. We do this a lot in my podcasts. If you ever get to listen to any, you'll see that the rambles are there, and quite often we're like, I don't know where I was going with that, and I can't remember what the
I do
question was.
do it all the time.
I,
I just go off on a little tangent, and then normally it's not caused by my daughter, but they're normally just caused by my own head being so busy.
that's a weird thing as well. I remember talking to my wife last year before, no, last year, and we're talking about my head. It's just is so busy, and it's really struggled to control it and everything. And I was trying to get her to understand, and I couldn't. I said, "Well, what when do you not have lots of things going on in your head?" She says, "No." Like, what do you mean? Well, I don't get that concept of you not thinking of anything and you hasn't got lots of things. She said, "Well, if I'm looking at that bag, I'm just thinking of that bag because I'm looking at that one bag." I'm like, "How is that?
That's just wild, though.
Yeah, I didn't
I
know that
can't.
was a
I can't
thing."
imagine it. Yeah, I can't imagine having a quiet brain. Like, do you know when people say, like, some people say they haven't really got an internal monologue? I'm like, are you not bored? Like, what are you listening to all day? Mine's like there's some music playing in the background. Everything's going on in my head. And as you say, like, if you're looking at a bag, I'm usually like, got a million things going on in my head based around that bag. What has that tea? Sorry.
So I thought you were telling me to be quiet there for a minute.
No, trying to get her to leave the room. There you go. The joys of kids. She's
Um,
gone.
yeah, it's really that's a weird thing, and because we've never had it, it's hard to put ourselves into that sort of situation. You know, clearing it. What would it be like for a clear mind? No idea.
No clue. Same as
Yeah,
people who can just, their head hits the pillow and they go to sleep. Like,
yeah.
why are you not having a million conversations with yourself? Like, are you not running through your whole entire day, every conversation you've had, everything you should have said in that conversation instead of what you did say? Like, you need a solid few hours. How are you just going to sleep?
Yeah, that's my wife again. She's lie down,
Yeah,
seconds, minutes.
yeah.
How?
My husband's exactly the same. And I'm like, how? What are you doing?
This is it. I've got literally another 45 minutes of turning over and puffing up the pillow and all that before I even get to be fairly rested. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
before you get to the thinking stage.
This
And
is
then the
it.
thinking stage takes a few hours.
Oh man. Oh well. One of those things, isn't it? It
Yeah,
is what it is.
crazy brain.
So going back to the diagnosis, you're not going to take probably not going to take medication, which is fine, and you've got things put in place. Do
Yeah.
you think from that, let's just say yes, your ADHD, if they see something else as well, I don't know, and I can't even think what else there could be, um, be it OCD, be it sensory processing disorder, something else as well. Would you go for that as well? Would you look at that as well, assessment wise?
Um, with the OCD, they checked that's already been assessed. So I had OCD before, obviously, this came about. And when they took me in for my autism assessment, they said sometimes people get like diagnosed with OCD when it's actually autism. So they were like, we're going to assess it and we're going to see whether we take away the OCD diagnosis and replace it with autism. But when I went in, they were like, no, you've got autism and OCD. So I already know with them too that I have got them. If it went into things like, again, there's so many things under the umbrella of neurodivergence.
Yeah,
I don't think I'd go further than ADHD and autism, purely because I feel like I'm comfortable with the diagnosis of neurodivergence, basically. And I tend to use the term, as much as I do say, I'm autistic and the autism, I tend to use neurodivergent because that then covers anything that I'm feeling. Because I don't doubt that some of my traits might overlap into other diagnoses and they are all so closely linked. I don't really see that there would be any benefit in exploring it deeper
yeah, that's fair.
personally. But obviously, if people chose to, go for it. But for me personally, I don't think I would. Um, Purely because waiting lists are so long. I mean, by the time I actually got round to getting diagnosed for anything, I'll probably be 18 in a care home. So
Yeah.
it's probably not going to benefit me that much.
Yeah, and then they'll say, "Well, I think you might have dementia. Let's get you diagnosed." No,
Yeah.
yeah,
I better chuck another one in.
yes. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, I think really, I mean, you've got to look at, I mean, where you are, how it's affecting you, how it's affecting your life, and everything around you as well. Because do you have kids? Do you have partner, husband? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have a stressful job? Do you travel a lot? There's so many things that can impact your life with
Yeah.
stress, sensory, um, being overloaded with information from all areas. It can really play a toll on a lot of people in different ways. As I say, it's a journey, different journey for everybody.
Mm.
It's spectrum.
Yeah.
No, you forgot that word. So there's lots of different areas.
Yeah. It's about learning, and for me, the autism diagnosis, like the person I was, if you had spoken to me probably 6 months before I got diagnosed, say, I wasn't this person. I was somebody who was absolutely in the pits of mental health crisis. Um, I didn't know where I was going to get better. Everywhere I went, we're just like, oh, we don't know what to do with you because you don't respond to this therapy, you don't respond to this. Um, what we now realize is because I had a neurodivergent brain and they were doing normal therapies which weren't designed for me. Um, so just having the autism diagnosis has completely changed my world. Like it's changed my perspective on being kinder to myself. And I think that's what was missing, and that's what was causing the mental health crisis. As much as I do still get anxiety, I still get depressive episodes. You know, I don't think I'm ever going to be free from mental health problems. Um, they're always going to be there. But I think being kinder to myself has been the biggest thing I've had to learn, in that I was so critical. And every time something would go wrong, I'd be like, this is your fault. This is you. You're broken. They can't find a therapy for you because you're a weirdo. You're completely not reasonable with them. You're difficult. You're a problem. And then obviously that can cause such a damage to your self-worth and your everything. And I had everything. I got married at 20. I got a wonderful husband, wonderful kids, but I still felt completely broken. So just being told, no, you were autistic, and then being able to explore this new world of thinking, no, okay, this wasn't designed for me, that's been such a revelation for me. And it's just been a complete game changer. Um, that I can be kinder to myself. And I think that was what was needed for me personally. And that's what I've had out of the autism diagnosis, which is why I don't feel I'd love to fix it all. I'd love to be free from it all and be able to fit into the world, be able to complete tasks, work effectively. Um, but I can't. And I've just learned to accept that rather than have to fight against it. And that's been the biggest thing for me.
You're right. I think a lot of people feel that way as well. To be honest with you, like I said, when you get the answers, and I've always stressed this in a lot of the podcasts that I do, that it's not about the diagnosis. It's about the answers.
Yeah.
It's the answers that make. I hate people. I want to get diagnosed as ADHD. Why? I don't want to have ADHD. I'm
Yeah.
happy that I got diagnosed. I went for assessment. I got the diagnosis, and I was really, really happy. Not because I got ADHD, because it sucks. I don't want it. Please take it away.
No.
But it's
Yeah.
now I've got the answers to my life. My life makes sense. Everything fits into
Yeah.
place now. And
Yeah.
I understood myself, and
Mm.
that, as you say, is massive to be able to then move
Yeah.
forward. Because
Yeah. I
where
know.
I was, I wasn't in a great place either, but it just turned things around. And I had again, a lot of people, the depression, the anxiety, that's what I had
Mm.
before, you know,
Yeah.
and I didn't speak about that.
No.
My wife knew, but I didn't. The rest of my family, no, never spoke about um, that at all, because stigma, and I didn't really have any answers, any reasons
Mm.
why it was manifesting how it was manifesting. Made no sense. But when I got the ADHD, everything made sense, because as you do, you do your research, a lot of research before you go to the assessment anyway, as we do. So you kind of
Yeah.
like understand stuff, but it all makes sense, and it makes a massive difference to your life.
Yeah.
It really, really
It,
does.
it's something you can't explain. And I think there's the problem. Before that, everyone says, oh, do you want to why do you want to label so and so? Why do you want to label on yourself? No, I don't want to label. But without having the label, if that's what we're going to call it, of autism or ADHD, I was labeling myself such horrible stuff. I was labeling myself broken. I don't deserve my place here. The labels I'd put on myself were horrendous. So then I could remove them and go, no, I'm autistic, which is a correct label. It's not a label, it's a diagnosis of what I am. And I can start to work with that. I couldn't work my life with a label of broken. It was incorrect, it was false, it wasn't based on anything. It was just made up by the fact that I couldn't fit in with anybody. Um, so now this diagnosis of autism has been able to clear that. Obviously, I still get days where I feel like that, but I'm not looking at people going, all right, okay, I've got depression and anxiety. I'm not looking at other people with depression and anxiety going, oh, but this works for them. Why doesn't this work for me? I was comparing myself to people that are chalk and cheese to me. They can go in and have CBT or EMDR and sit there comfortably and do it, and it might work for them, it might not. Um, but it didn't work for me because I was autistic, and it was just explaining all of those things to me. That's what people don't realize. It's a diagnosis, it's not a label. It's it's clarity.
I still struggle with the fact that people say things like that, like it's the label. I do. I have a sort of online group, and I do newsletters and all that. And one of the last ones I put out, it was that, you know, about the label. It's,
Yeah.
if your child, if you got neurodivergent children, or you got a child who's struggling at school, seriously
Mhm.
struggling at school, getting into trouble, um, struggling with doing their homework, not getting the grades, struggling with friendships, struggling at home, everything's a struggle. They are going to be labeled. Okay.
Mm.
They are going to be labeled. And those labels are not going to help. Those labels are not going
No,
to help that child at all whatsoever. But you go
no.
down the line of getting assessed and getting the support, be it diagnosis or whatever,
Mm.
call it a label, whatever. But the label that you get from that is going to help them and support them and nurture them and send them on the right
Yeah,
path and educate you as a parent to help them as well. Educate the
yeah,
school. I'd rather have that label. I'd rather have my ADHD label than what I had before, because what I
yeah.
had before was not good.
You can grow with it now.
Yeah.
You can move forward. That there's only a limit to how many times you can sit there being so self-critical on yourself, thinking, "Oh, I'm the odd one out." You're not going to be able to battle those things in your brain forever without finding some clarity and finding some truth. And thankfully, we did manage to find that, get that diagnosis. I know a lot of people are still waiting. Um, but that's where even just researching, I know a lot of people, if it was easier to get diagnosed, I would say go and get diagnosed. But because I know how hard it is to actually get a diagnosis, if you are reading, as we say, like legitimate things online, I'm not talking about these TikTok videos that say if you like this sound, you might be autistic. Like, no, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Um, but if you're reading legitimate articles, listening to real life people who are living with it, and you're resonating with it, put what they're saying into practice. It's not going to do you any harm. If they're saying to, calm things down, set routines, or blah, 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 do it. It's not going to cause you any harm. And if it makes your life better, so what about getting it down on paper? You can pursue that later on. Put the things into practice now. Don't focus on getting that diagnosis before you make the changes to your life,
Oh,
because
absolutely. Yeah.
it changes your world.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like I say, with the waiting list, I ain't. Oh, well, for an adult over here, you could be like 5 years down the line. No, I've been nearly 60. No, it's like,
Yeah,
no, put the thing. Yeah, like I say, put things in
exactly.
place now.
It's important, and it changes, getting it down on paper does like change your mindset completely. But I wouldn't wait for then to make the changes to your life, because the fact is the things that we're putting into our lives, the things that we're trying to, change and adapt, they wouldn't actually harm a neurotypical person,
Yeah.
it wouldn't do any harm to them. It's not like we're offering a medication. I know with ADHD, I'm talking about those practical day to day things that we have to implement. Well, if you need to go and sit at 5 minutes on a peanut ball or something to regulate your senses or whatever, do it. It's not going to do you any harm either way.
I'm trying to get my head around a peanut bowl. What's a peanut bowl?
Peanut ball. A peanut ball. Have you seen them?
No.
They're really good for kids with ADHD, so you can use them for sensory circuits. They're basically like a yoga ball, but they got a dip in the middle, so children can roll over. Well, and adults
Ah,
can.
okay. Yeah, I
You
got
can
you.
you can roll back and forth, and it's really good for grounding. And so that's another top tip for you. Get yourself a peanut ball.
Cool. Now I know what you mean. Yeah. I was like, what is she
Yeah,
talking about? But yeah, no, they are
yeah.
they are good. Haven't got one, but yeah, they are good.
They're fab for children in particular. They use them in schools to do like sensory circuits and stuff. They're brilliant.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, my son will love it. My, to be
Well,
fair,
worth it.
we will probably argue over it, to be honest with you. No, it's my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. Just before we finish up though, if you went for the diagnosis and they said nope, so you went to assessment, sorry, and they said nope, it's not ADHD, just autism.
Mm. Mm.
How would you feel?
Um, I would be shocked because the traits are strong. But I think because I've got the autism diagnosis, I would then just put all those traits down to autism anyway. Um, so having one, I don't know. I don't know. It would shock me purely because I think ADHD was the first one that the psychiatrist picked up and stuff. So it would take me by surprise, but it wouldn't, yeah, it wouldn't break me because I feel
That's good.
the autism diagnosis has already got me to implement the things in my life, and I wouldn't stop implementing the things I've put in place that are for ADHD. So it wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't go, okay, well, I'm not actually diagnosed ADHD, so I'm not gonna use a fidget toy. I'm not gonna whatever else. I'm not gonna use my timers. I'm not gonna try and combat the executive dysfunction because regardless of whether I have ADHD or not, I definitely have executive dysfunction. I definitely have RSD. I definitely have, justice sensitivity and things like that. So yeah, it wouldn't really, I wouldn't then go, okay, I'm not going to combat any of those things because I'm not diagnosed with it because I have them. And that's just a reality.
Yeah, I think that again, that's a really good point. Um, because if you get don't get a diagnosis, it doesn't mean that you're not going through what you're going through. If you are struggling for whatever reason, if you can't concentrate, if you get a bit overwhelmed or a bit anxious in crowds or whatever it is, just because you don't have a diagnosis, it doesn't mean you don't struggle with that. It doesn't mean anything apart from you struggle with that. So now you
Yeah,
just got to put something in place that will stop you from struggling, either to help you feel more comfortable in that situation or to steer away from that situation in the first place. So that's
yeah.
a big thing to remember.
And that's what you've got to remember is that in order to, have the diagnosis, you have to tick a lot of boxes. You've basically got to have a combination of traits and symptoms. They've got to have, span through your life and stuff. Well, even neurotypical people individually can struggle with the same things we struggle with. It might not be as heightened and it won't be a combination of it. But I'm sure, like, even neurotypical people might get some form of executive dysfunction, not in the same way and not in the same, but everyone can struggle with things, and that's absolutely fine. So, as I say, the things that we put in place for us, I spoke to someone yesterday and they were like, the way we think can actually change things. And I firmly believe this. Like, we could implement the things that we're using in order for neurotypical people to have healthier relationships with their mind, to have healthier relationships with their needs and their body, because that is something we are doing. We're basically looking at, right, okay, my body needs this, my brain needs this, I can't cope in this situation, I need to remove myself. Whereas there's we've got different boundaries and different limits because ours are a bit shorter kind of thing. But neurotypical people also have some boundaries and they have
Yeah.
some things that they have to push through, and even when they don't want to and when they're not comfortable. So by us standing up and going, do you know what? No, I'm going to accept my limits. We're also setting an influence for neurotypical people as well, because the things we're putting in place would make no harm if the whole world took them on.
Yeah.
Just accepting where your boundary is, where your line is, appreciated. Like my fuse is far shorter than a neurotypical person, but they are still going to meet that end at some point and they need to learn what to do when they're in that overwhelmed zone.
That's another good point. Yeah. I'm glad I talked to you,
Don't know where
actually.
that came
Oh,
from, but
yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
took myself by surprise on that one.
No, that is a really, really, really good point. Because there's yeah, neurotypical people will crack on with things, and and at some point it does hit them.
Yeah,
It hits us a lot quicker, a lot sooner, more severe in a lot of cases. But yeah, we
yeah,
can do the same sort of things, put things in place to help and support ourselves. So
yeah. And set an example to show.
yeah,
I don't think there's that much wrong in the way we think. I think actually we think in a very healthy way as long as we listen to our body. It's when we start fighting against our brain that we start getting overwhelmed and really stressed. But actually, the core of how we think and believe um, is actually quite healthy when you think of it like in black and white. Um, yeah, I think it's a really healthy way to live as long as you're listening to it. My biggest
yes,
problem was fighting against it, and trying to be this party person and trying to be this sociable person. I think once I went, no, I'm actually not that sociable. I'm quite happy sat on my sofa eating crisps and watching Below Deck. Like I'm happy.
below deck.
Below Deck. Honestly, if you haven't watched it, do it.
No,
Go for it.
no, sorry, I disagree. Sorry, I'm not having it.
Well, you can apply whichever one. Or Pobl y Cwm. I was going to say Pobl y Cwm actually, because that's my favourite show, but I figured you wouldn't know what that was, so I decided to go for an English one.
Fair enough. Thank you for considering my Englishness.
All the time. I've got to consider it. It's fine.
Listen, it's been really nice talking to you. It's I think it's an interesting topic. I still think it's a very interesting topic. A lot of people are going to have their own take on things, and it will all depend on their own situation, the severity of their symptoms, how it affects their lives, what's going on around them. But like you said, knowledge is key. Knowledge is a big thing. That's the thing you want to really understand, is what is going on. Not necessarily as a diagnosis, but what is literally going on. Are you struggling? Okay, let's see what we can do about it. And that's the main thing. Waiting lists are too long. Trying to get
Yeah.
help, it's impossible. When you go for an ADHD diagnosis, I don't know about the autism diagnosis, but ADHD diagnosis, with so much stuff you get with it, baggage wise, you go get
Yeah.
diagnosed. All right, okay, yes, you're diagnosed, you're combined or you're inattentive, whatever. Okay, there you go. See you later, bye. Okay, that's like an industry norm, which
Yeah.
shouldn't really be like that, because everything you get diagnosed with for ADHD, you don't necessarily struggle with. You struggle. That's not what's ruining your life, so to speak. It's the baggage that's been brought along with it that you're
Yeah.
struggling with. And you need to understand that. That's the whole big, the RSD, those
Yeah.
those types of things, the sensory issues,
Mhm.
the sleep issues, all those things come up with it.
Yeah.
Um, so I've completely lost where I was going with it. There we are.
No, I know what you mean. You need help to unpack it, but instead you get sent with. In my case, I think I had like loads of booklets. I don't know how many leaflets they gave me when I left, and that was they did go through the booklets with me, but it was still very much go and find your own way. go and find which one of them works for you when you've got a booklet with about 3 million things. You're going, all right, okay.
Yeah, it's tough. But the one thing I know about this community, um, it's very welcoming. The neurodivergent community is very welcoming, very understanding.
Yeah.
Literally the only reason why I'm still doing these podcasts. I'm not a
Mm.
speaker. I struggle to get my words out. It's hard work, and most of the time I just waffle and bore myself, to be honest with you.
No.
But before my medication, before I got the diagnosis, I would not be having conversations over webcam with anybody, with family, let alone anybody else.
Yeah.
But when talk to neurodivergent people, we get it a little bit easier, and you
Mm.
accept everyone's struggles. I don't feel that massively conscious about how I talk,
Yeah.
be it too slow, be it too waffly, be it too quick sometimes, you know.
Yeah, fine.
But I do outside, I do with neurotypical people. So,
Yeah.
but it's a good place to be. So if you think you are neurodivergent anyway, get into the community, speak to people, see what it's like, see what people are going through, see if anything resonates. But now I am
Yeah.
waffling on, so I'm going to shut up because I want some dinner. I've got to be honest with you. I am hungry.
So am I, and I've got to go and sort the child that kept interrupting us.
No problem. You go do that. Thank you so much for coming on. For everybody else, remember, be good, be kind. Always remember, you're not alone. Thank you.